Embedded in the idea that you can manifest your dream life is the reality, is the necessity of you to submit yourself to the death of the old. My name is Lucian St. James. I'm a divine embodiment coach, and I thank you for co-creating this moment here with me on the ministry of Assumption Absolute, manifestation from a non-dual perspective, experiential commentary on life as both the flesh and the divine. And I think it's so basic. And there's so much within the crucifixion story, right? And if you come from a Christian background, then the whole idea is that I never even understood this. Like this, it didn't even fundamentally make sense for me. Like, so Jesus died for my sins. Jesus died for my sins, but also you can do a certain amount of sins depending on that denomination, and then you'll still go to hell. Like, none of it. I mean, I don't tend to criticize anything, or anyone try not to, because it's just negative energy. But I'm just saying, logically to me, I mean, and none of this is logical. We talk about quantum physics, we talk about collapsing realities, we talk about non-duality, we talk about law of attraction, law of assumption, law of resonance, law of vibration, law of polarity. I mean, none of it makes logical sense. But the crucifixion story from a Christian lens just really is ludicrous to me. Talk about insanity. But if we look at just the very basic understanding of the story, this is a Gnostic perspective. This is a metaphysical perspective. So this message is not intended for anybody that belongs to a denomination or a specific religion, but if we look at the basic story from a manifestation, from a spirituality standpoint, of Yeshua who goes to the cross, well, what then happens after that? Yeshua resurrects. And then that's the whole, I mean, even from a Christian lens, right? Like, that's the whole message, is that, fine, from a Christian perspective, Jesus was such a God that despite the Roman Catholic Church and Pontius Pilate and the Pharisees and everybody saying kill him, he rose anyway. And that's why he's, revered as our direct connection to God from a Christian standpoint, which fine. But if we look at it from a Gnostic standpoint, and all of the different ways through which the Gospels, and then that's just the canonical Gospels. That's not the secret book of John and the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, where Yeshua says there is no sin. We're not even talking about the Gospel of Philip. We're not talking about the Gospel of Thomas. Like, we're not even just saying, we're looking at like a very basic, it's going to be just a very basic. I just want you to think about it from this way, understanding that, Yeshua talks about, Pontius is like, don't you understand that I can kill you? Don't you understand I can end your life? Like, are you, tune in? Do you understand what's happening here? And then Yeshua says, if you could kill me, it was because you were given the authority from above, meaning like, I'm not afraid of you. This has no bearing. Like, there's no power that you have that was not given to you from above, meaning like, you don't have power over me. The only thing that has power over me is my connection to the divine. I and the Father are one, but the Father is greater than I. The Father, then, being source conscious, being the all, being the is, that is a universal power source, but then by way of our attention, being as children of that, or as I like to call it, as individualized expressions of that, Yeshua only came to tell us that we are also that. If we can recognize the divinity in him, and we can recognize that I too am a human, and he too here is presenting as a human, yet he has direct connection to the divine source origin point, then as that should have been what the conclusion was, then I as a human also have a connection to the divine source origin point, because we're the same thing. Jesus didn't come to say, Yeshua didn't come to say, hey, celebrate me. I'm great, I'm cool, I'm awesome. It's like, look at yourself. If you can see me in you, you can only observe what you are. That's the mirror principle. You can only observe what you are. So if you can observe me, then that means that you are of me, and Yeshua asks, well, who do you say that I am? If you know that I am God, and that God is here, for you to be able to see God, that would mean that you're God too. It takes one to know one type of deal. So that's in the Bible, by the way. It takes one to know one. That's But my point is that, there's a very powerful message in the crucifixion, that circumstance may appear to end that which you thought tethered you to this plane. So we believe that if I lose this relationship, it's going to be the end of me. If I lose this job, it's going to be the end of me. If I lose this car, if something happens to me circumstantially, Pontius Pilate is saying, like, this shit's about to end. We're about to die. Like, do you grasp it, brother? Like, do you get what's going on here? But the only power that we have, and that's what Yeshua was saying, is like, I don't grant you any power over me. And if you do have any power, it will be given to you from above. But it's not by way of me paying attention to which you're staying and then placing myself in a state of subordination, with I and the Father being one, but the Father being greater than I. That means that I am the one that decides who and what has power in my reality. And I decide that I am not subject to your word, to your law, or even to your threats to end my material body, because my material body is the separated illusion of that which I appear to be. It is not all I am. I am an individualized expression of the all that is. So how does all of this pertain to your manifestation journey? Which there's no journey. It's all happening right here, right now. Nobody needs to teach you to manifest. It is happening right here, right now. You only get more of what you already have. If you don't give it to yourself right now through the statements that are attached to your I am, meaning who you say that you are, and the types of things that you are feeding your focus, because whatever you focus on will multiply. Whatever, I mean, if you think of your focus, think of it as like seeds that you're planting. All right, so then if the garden of your life looks like bullshit, well, what have the seeds of your focus been? That's all that's happening. It'd be very simple. We can make it more complicated. I've made it more complicated. I'll probably make it more complicated next video. We can make it more complicated than that. But on a fundamental level, that is all that's happening. So what do we learn from the crucifixion? That thing that is threatening essentially to end a certain, I mean, I even look at the crucifixion as ending a certain version of self, ending a certain version of circumstances, really even ending a timeline. If you do plan to manifest, meaning, if you're paying attention to and assigning to yourself as an individual expression of God, this is who I say I am, this is what I'm experiencing in the now moment, this is what I'm going to pay attention to, these are the decisions I've made about how I will engage with the life around me, this is what I say, this is what's going on, I don't care what else is happening besides that, then that means that you will have to die to that old life. Now, that could mean cataclysmic changes, could mean a whole new lifestyle, it could mean a move, it could mean the end of your relationships, or it could mean the end of your certain idea about those things. People talk about, I manifest my SP back. In certain circumstances, you're maybe never going to get that person back. There's maybe not, it's not, there's quantum, there's a million different parallel quantum possibilities of you and them being in love if they were toxic to you or abusive to you or just maybe in some way unhealthy for you. Sure. But the death of the self might mean the death of that timeline that was even entertaining a relationship with somebody that would treat you in an unhealthy way in the first place. Or it could mean the death of the ideas that you have about them, and the death of self that believes it should tolerate a certain dynamic of relationship that was unhealthy, that allowed that relationship to persist. So, but either way, because you know how addictive negativity can be. One of the things I've been working in the field of mental wellness for 7 years, and very recently, the last 2 years, I've just been just really hitting home on identity, right? Like I'm like, let's start there because all change is happening at the level of identity. We can work top down or bottom up, but we're going to be talking, if we're not talking about who you are, we can talk about all the coping skills and all the ideas and all the reframes and all the patterning and all of the new narrative stories and all the processing and all of the emotional validation and, all of the unconditional positive regard. Like we can do all of that, but if you don't work on who you believe you are relative to that, to any of that, then we're just working skills. And really, and I've talked to clients about this and they found it to be very effective. I'm like, rather than, demolishing, if we look at the mind as a mental landscape, like a neighborhood, unless we demolish all those dilapidated, fallen apart, just, thrown together homes that, you got raccoons living in them, you got freaking windows busted out, just all types of negative stuff. Unless we clear the ground of all of those, just really, beat up, torn up real estate, I said, then we're just putting new windows on a house that's already fallen apart. I said, coping skills, if we're not talking about how you see yourself and the ideas that you maintain about how your world is responding to you and who you are in the context of that experience, then we're just painting a house that needs a new roof. It really doesn't freaking matter. So, that's the shortcut. I said all change is happening at the level of identity. Who do you say that you are? And when you decide, I am love, then all the things that are not like love, they're going to leave you. And it might be ideas, or it might be literal circumstances. It might be actual people. it might be your life actually changing, but your ideas about life have to absolutely change. And the reason I told you that story about, clients is because it can actually be really addictive to have like a low sense of self, or like a negative idea of self-esteem, self-worth, self-concept. Because in a way, if I'm just this way, I don't really have to try. And I certainly don't have to hope. Now, I don't suggest that anybody hope. Hope is a fool's errand, of course, because then I'm wishing for some type of outside force other than myself to create some type of outcome, and I'm attached to an outcome, and I'm also saying that I can't control, and I call that hope. uh Hope's not good. Hope is as good as an illicit substance. You keep snorting that and wondering, why isn't my life getting any better? But what I have seen to be the hardest thing is not teaching people coping skills, and not even teaching people how to reframe their thoughts, not teaching people how to, it's not difficult to identify negative thought patterns and practice thought stopping and prevent them from derailing. It's not, that's the hardest part, is to stop identifying as an anxious person, to stop identifying as a person that experiences a certain type of symptom, to stop identifying as somebody who has ADHD. It doesn't mean you don't experience the symptoms, the experience of the symptoms of the things, and we work on that level. But that it can be really hard to, if we're talking about even just like the death of self, and the death of self being the death of certain ideas, we're talking about the crucifixion of the version of you that was living in that reality that represented whatever level of unfulfillment that it was. If you decide that I am love, then that means that you don't you don't get to keep the things in your life. It means things will leave. Either your idea, your concept of how the world functions outside of you will leave, which will feel like loss. That person that always has negative bullshit to say, when you just start saying, I am love, I am complete, I am fulfilled because I'm an individualized expression of the all, it is, nothing even needs to validate that for me. That's just the goddamn truth. And that person that, you see their name on there, they'll come up on your phone, you're like, God damn it, I don't have 2 hours to listen to them bitch and complain, but I'm a good person. So you get this like kind of martyred on this people-pleasing bullshit syndrome. All of a sudden they stop calling. And you wonder, well, do they not like me, or what's going on? What's going on? So to manifest your dream life, you have to consent to the death of your old life. And it will certainly come on an ideological level, meaning it will certainly come on the realm of idea. You will have to let go of the timelines of versions of self that occupied states of separation from the life of your fulfillment, of your wholeness, of perfection, of completion, the life of your design. You will have to let go of the life that was reflective of everything you thought you needed. You thought you needed your body, and what I mean by the crucifixion, you thought you needed the things on this material plane. You will probably lose the things, it usually happens, you will lose the things that are not conducive to that state of self before you gain the things that you think would represent it to you in the first place. But you're already all of it. It doesn't really matter what's happening out here. That's the lesson of the crucifixion. So you kill the material, you don't kill the soul, you don't kill the self. That's here. That's permanent. That's present. So you have to be okay with it. Manifest your dream life, be okay with loss. Be okay with loss of ideas, of states of self that are not conducive to that new state. And that it's okay. You don't have to keep feeling like a piece of shit. And you also don't have to keep waiting on things to get better in order to feel better. Isn't that something? Sounding off in today's transmission of the Ministry of Assumption Absolute. My name is Lucian Francois Mateo St. James. Check out the Dispatches from the Edge of Obvious podcast and the Liberation Chronicle, which is the written word of this platform, both available to you for free. And if you've got questions, you can drop them in the comments or hit my email, and we will address that on an upcoming transmission. Until next time, remember to be good to yourselves and others, because everybody's just a version of you. Anyway.